Hey there everybody, it's Nathan Cool with Surfer Magazine. I wanted to give you an update on a few things, what's happening with this atmospheric river storm that's just about to come to an end but could end with a bang today. And as we start looking forward in time, in the short term, what's going to happen with some of the influences that are actually pushing that atmospheric river storm. And what does that mean, not just for our weather, but not just for the rain, but also what's kind of happening with the snow. Going to take a brief look at that, but also more importantly, what's going to be happening with the surf, not just now and what's coming down the pike from this storm, but and what's trailing behind it from the Gulf of Alaska, but what's happening elsewhere across the Pacific. So there's a lot of stuff going on, especially now that we're into our first day of spring. Before getting into all that though, I did want to give a big shout out, a big thanks to everyone who's bought my new book, Surf, Flood, Fire and Mud. This book goes into detail about these atmospheric river storms and also some of the things, the dynamics that are behind the orographic enhancement that made the rainfall so powerful this time around, and also then what led up to some of the biggest wave events that we've seen over the last few years and the aftermath then that followed. You can get that on Amazon.com, and there's a link to that in the description for this video. But taking a look at what's coming into the near term and also for the long term right now on the horizon across the Pacific and elsewhere, this is what's going on right now. So first thing, taking a look at this great GOES full disk satellite from NOAA, we can get a good idea of what's happening here with the water vapor. Looking at this big atmospheric river, we can see it moving in here. And there's actually then a low pressure system. That's what's been driving it. It's been circulating counterclockwise up there. There's been a clockwise circulating low, high pressure system down here that's then been pushing both of this streams of moisture, this moisture plume coming in from way low in the tropics, and then also up here the one that's been the Pineapple Express typical that comes past Hawaii and up there. So as we move that forward in time, we can see that beautiful look of that amazing stuff that happens in our atmosphere with this atmospheric river pattern. These patterns are very common across the Pacific. That's actually what brings most of our rainfall to Southern California. So although it might have been hyped up quite a bit on the news, and for good reason, there's a lot of flood potential, mudslide potential with it, these type of events are actually very typical to California. It's when they last a long time, and it's something I get into in more detail in my book, talking about also what happened in the 1800s and also in the 1960s with similar storms like this, as well as what happened over the last few years, not just with California, but also things like Hurricane Harvey. Also affected by that. So as we take a look at what's happened though synoptically here across the Pacific, you can take a look here. Here's Baja, here's California. We can see that there's a low pressure system here that's pushing south. And that's an important feature here because that's what's been pushing the atmospheric river south as well. As we move that forward in time, we can see that big area of low pressure sits there and spins and pushes south somewhat, but then it does go inland. Now, when we take a look a little farther out on the long range, we can see this is on Sunday. But as we go out even farther, we can see somewhat of a drying trend next week, but it doesn't immediately dry until we start getting around the Monday, Tuesday time frame. And then after that, then things get a little dicey. We still get some high pressure across our area, but then as we start getting into April, then something else could change. Watch what's happening up here from the Gulf of Alaska. Another storm coming down our way. This one right here is the possibility to bring some type of precipitation to our area, like around probably Monday the 2nd, possibly Tuesday the 3rd. There's also some interesting stuff forming out of the western Pacific here, and if the high pressure can stay weak enough over here in the Gulf, then we might be able to see some surf out of that, but right now it's just not looking too surf worthy. This system here would probably be more storm than wave. We can see also then how this interacts with the atmosphere and the moisture. This is just relative humidity at about, what is that, 850 millibars or so. It's about a mile above us. We can see then what's happening as we move the models forward in time. The atmospheric river starts to falter. You can see it breaking apart here. There's still moisture out there, but watch Southern California. It starts to get rather dry. Now, right around the Saturday into Sunday time frame, there's a possibility that we might be able to see a little bit more moisture creep into our area. Would it be enough for rain? Hard to tell right now, but we can see that after that though, things really dry out and there's just not a whole lot of moisture our way, so no matter what storm would come our way. But when we start getting toward then the beginning of April, that's when we start seeing then more chances for that type of moisture to pull down our way, which could then bring more rain to Southern California. As far as the waves are concerned, we can also see how that low pressure system that's pushing the atmospheric river south, it's also then bringing in some dynamics for today. It's creating some fetch up here in the Gulf of Alaska. As we move the models forward in time, we can see that fetch starts moving toward California, which will start increasing some of the ground swell in Southern California this weekend, but it's going to come in from a very steep angle, so it's not going to be a whole lot. But then we do get some wind swell still in the mix with that. So I've got timing on all that as far as the size estimates also on my report on surfer.com. Let's go to forecasts.surfer.com, look for Southern California, and you'll find my report. There's a problem coming up though as that system dives south, and that's going to be also the winds associated with those. This is a great wind model at 10 meters. And we can start watching the winds around Southern California. It's like they start picking up. Yeah, we start getting some winds in here Friday, a little bit of onshoreness, but watch what happens as we enter into the weekend. We start getting into Saturday. This would actually be then Sunday morning, but Saturday afternoon, winds really start picking up. We can see by Sunday morning and potentially even more. This would be sometime in the afternoon, evening on Sunday, and they could persist then into Monday. So something we have to watch for. If we do get winds out of it, we're going to get wind swell. So it's one of those tricky timing things, but winds are going to be a tricky timing over the weekend. Of course, I got more details on exactly what to expect for your regions in the my report on Surfer. But one of the dynamics coming with this storm is what's happening with our temperatures. So take a look up here. This is up in the upper atmosphere. And once again, about a mile up, 850 millibars. We can take a look at this freezing boundary here. This is where the cold air is right now. You can see the atmospheric river still streaming in. And there's fairly warm temps down here. You can see this red line here following my mouse. That's about 15 degrees Celsius, which is fairly warm in the upper atmosphere. Freezing line though right above it, and as we move the models forward in time, that freezing line drops south. We get colder air. Those 15-degree temps go down to Baja. We're stuck with about 9-degree temps at the warmest around the border. So we're going to get some cold air moving into Southern California, and even more so as we get into Sunday. Look at that as it starts moving down. Some very cold air is going to be moving in. Obviously that's going to bring colder temperatures, but it can also affect the snow levels. Right now though, snow levels, taking a look out here, this is a great system here, the WPC by NOAA, and you can see that most of the snowfall's really staying up and around the Sierras. So when we take a look at Mammoth, they're going to get some snow. They're far enough north at a high enough elevation, but snow's staying above 8,000 feet right now. As we move the models forward in time, there just isn't a whole lot else that would fall, even though the temperatures would, but there's another storm headed down our way over the next couple days. It's not going to really hit Southern California so much. There's a slight possibility, like I showed in the one of the models earlier, that we could see something Saturday into Sunday, but that's really going to be for Northern California. So when we get up to that time frame, we can see that the Sierras would start getting even more snow. So into that Sunday time frame here, we're taking a look at a fair amount of snow with that cold air behind it falling into around Mammoth area. So the Sierras will definitely be getting some more snow by the looks of it with what's coming down our way, especially with that cold air and getting that atmospheric river with the warm air out of the way. Taking a look at the southern hemisphere, what we can expect for surf, there is some improvement, but we are still in spring. It's still not that time of year yet. But if we watch down here, down around that Pitcairn area off of Antarctica, you can see there's a little bit of a nice trail northward, but watch what happens. A nice little system here comes up. It's not really big, but that could bring us something probably around, the second or third. You know, we got another one that's coming up through that bulge. That could give us a little bit more. But when it stays below 50 south, that's a far distance for us to really get much surf out of it. So we can get some long periods, but just waist to chest high stuff. And once again, all the timing on that, degrees, and as far as the size, that'll be in my report on Surfer. What's happening though that's influencing a lot of this is that we are seeing some improvement from the my last video report. Remember there was a lot of strong high pressure, and there still is. That's these blue areas down here. As we move the models forward in time, we can still see that, yeah, we're seeing a lot of this high pressure that's really affecting storms coming out of the Indian Ocean into the Southern Ocean. We want them to drift north once they get past New Zealand. That really sends us some ideally angled swell. But it's not really happening right now until they get past that and up toward Pitcairn. And that's because we have a weaker area of high pressure here, so we got a nice low pressure pressure trough that's starting to point toward the north coming off Antarctica. And that's good news. As long as we see this pattern continue, and we're starting to see that over time, where there's just a lackluster kind of jet stream, so that these storms have a better chance of drifting north once they do form. And of course, this would be indicative to a La Nina or a neutral season, which is where we are right now. So taking a look at one of the more recent sea surface temperature readings by NOAA, we can see there's still La Nina temperatures going on, but it's not too severe as compared to what it could be. So when we take a look as we go forward in time, there's also a little bit of improvement this week on some of the forecasts for what could happen with La Nina and El Nino. Right now, definitely dipped into La Nina. We're starting to pull out of that by the looks of it, and most models now agree that we'll go into somewhat of a neutral state. You really got to get below a 5-degree or above a 5-degree difference to get out of what's considered really neutral. And look at what happens when we start getting into the end of the year and into January 2019. We could go at a really good neutral in toward what some models are showing could be somewhat of an El Nino season, but it's too early to call that right now. So in the short term, we still have to deal with what's left of that atmospheric river storm. So still bringing a lot of rain. It's been centered over Santa Barbara and Ventura counties, and also points north and around San Luis Obispo County. And also it's bringing a lot of moisture up toward the Sierras, but you got to get above 8,000 feet to get snow until we start getting toward the weekend. And that's when colder air is going to be coming down and another storm along with it. And of course, that could then bring snow levels down to probably about 6,000 feet as we start getting into the weekend and around especially the Sunday time frame by the looks of it right now for the snow. But looking forward, we do have some surf headed our way. It's going to be probably a wind-driven event, though, for the most part, because we've got a lot of wind issues coming up over the weekend. But that's all the short-term stuff. There's always good news on the horizon, but we are in spring. And so we are still waiting for the southern hemisphere season to really kick into gear, but nothing's really working against us to see that really start taking shape. So good news on the horizon for the southern hemisphere, in that the jet stream is starting to behave as we'd expect it to for getting into a decent southern hemisphere swell season. A little bit of stuff headed our way toward the beginning of April, which is also when we might be able to see a little bit more rain, so we've got to see how that plays out. But as we start moving then more toward the May, the June time frame, when we really start seeing the southern hemisphere storms start to kick up, there's nothing right now that says that that won't happen. So we've got a lot of good potential for seeing some decent storms come our way from that. As far as the hurricane potential, we're pretty much on track from my last report. Remember, if we're in a La Nina or a neutral state, then we can get a lot more hurricane activity off the East Coast. The Pacific portion of it, we really got to pull out of a La Nina state, though, to be able to get some warmer temperatures in toward the tropics to fuel hurricane swells. But if we don't get them, then that La Nina effect has a positive influence on the southern hemisphere jet stream, just like we're seeing now. So it's kind of a win-win situation for the West Coast, and of course for those on the East Coast, they watch those storms with trepidation. But if they can stay far enough out to the sea, like Jose did here last year, then they can see some epic swell as well. And once again, talking about Jose and some of the other storms that brought mega surf, I break those down in my latest book, which is Surf, Flood, Fire, and Mud, which you can get on Amazon, and the description of this video has a link to that as well. Well, I hope you liked this video and that it was useful for you and that it helped you plan your perfect sessions. If you did like this video, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel. It won't cost you anything, and as soon as one of these videos is posted, you'll be the first to know. Thanks a lot for watching. Until next time, take care, be safe, and smile in the lineup.